So if you focus on abundance, you start to see more abundance. If you focus on lack, you start to see more scarcity around you. For example, you're wanting to buy a red Toyota and you start seeing red Toyotas everywhere. It's not that there's more on the street, but you've primed your brain to start noticing.
Have you ever set your sights on a goal or tried to manifest something into your life only to feel like something is holding you back? If so, this episode is for you. Cosi, an intuitive mindset coach, shares powerful and practical tools to help you explore whether what you want is actually what you want or whether you're chasing something you think you should want. She provides simple techniques to help you uncover and release the blocks that may be holding you back and why expanders, people who stretch your beliefs and show you what's truly possible, are important for your life. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear and empowering roadmap to manifest what you want. To help you on your journey, Cosi is gifted a free future self-activation audio. This audio will help you drop into your heart, connect with your future self, and identify the subconscious blocks ready to be healed. You'll find the link in the show notes to access the audio. Get ready now to unlock your blocks and manifest your true path with Cosi. Welcome back, Cosi, to the D8 Training Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Your last episode was such a hit. I know personally just using some of the tools that you shared has really helped. I've had excellent feedback and we really appreciated how vulnerable and open you were about your journey.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been so excited about it too. This is actually the first time that I'm speaking about manifestation on a podcast. So it's quite special for me too. So thank you.
I'm glad I'm your first. I know when we met up for coffee, we spoke about the manifestation, and that's where I was like, everyone needs to hear about this. I think it's amazing, like the way you can attract different things in your life. I think back to when I moved to Adelaide, when we made the decision to move from Melbourne to Adelaide, we went, all right, we're going to make the move and this is what we want in a house, and we just listed it all out. And this house that we're living in now met all our requirements just by being clear. So I think it's very powerful.
It is, and I think a lot of us have been doing it for probably our whole lives, but we just didn't know there was a science behind it or a name for it as well.
What is manifestation and what is the science behind it?
So manifestation is grounded in neuroscience and it primes our brain for thriving, not just surviving. So it's about training your brain to focus on your goals and then aligning your thoughts, behaviours and biology with your intentions. So it's about how you act, think and feel, and this creates your reality. So it all starts with abundance, so believing that more is possible, but we're actually primed for loss aversion. So the more focus that we put on, I guess, being hurt, then what we can gain. And this isn't magic, it's about direction. So you visualize what you want, feel it as though it's already real, and then you act towards it. So it's a lot less about attracting and more about becoming. So there's that old rhetoric out there around manifestation from The Secret, which is very much that you think about it and you feel excited about it and it happens and it just kind of pops into your life. But the science of this really speaks about the importance of aligned action as well.
It's like going, there's no weeds in my garden, there's no weeds in my garden, there's no weeds in my garden. There's weeds in my garden, but I need to go pull them out. It sounds like that's what manifestation is. It's then taking that action or steps towards it to be able to attract it.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's all of those things that are so important. And specifically, the framework I really enjoyed learning about was from Lacey Phillips. And it speaks about 3 components that you need for manifestation to work. So first of all, it's aligned action and values-based living. So it's about living in integrity with your true, worthy and authentic self. Then you have to see to believe that it's possible. So you need expanders around you. So this is around surrounding yourself with people who show you what's possible. And then we manifest what we believe is possible. So these expanders help us rewire the ceiling of belief. So if you're trying to achieve something you've never achieved before, you find an example of a time you have or a person who has that's in your life. It doesn't have to be someone that you know. It could also be in media, if that helps, someone famous. But it really helps for you to see what's actually possible beyond the limits imposed by logical mind. And the last step, and I think probably the most important and overlooked step, is unblocked core beliefs. So believe that it's possible and that you're worthy, and then it makes it more likely to come into existence as well.
To summarize the 3 steps, it's aligned actions and values. So doing what it is that I want, being able to see to believe. So believing that, yes, I can achieve that. And that's by being around with people that have achieved what I want to achieve and get there. And then unblock core beliefs.
Yes, perfect. So manifestation is your soul's way of showing you what you most desire. So when you align your inner truth and you reconnect with your authenticity, you become magnetic. So it's about becoming energetically and subconsciously expanded enough to hold what you want. So it's not just about thinking positive, it's about blocking what's getting in the way. So gratitude, joy, imagination, visualization, these aren't just fluffy tools. They're strategic tools backed by neuroscience and psychology that help bring your desires into reality. And the biggest myth out there is that your life has to change before you do, but often you have to change before your life changes around you. One other thing that helps bring manifestations into reality is a thing called the reticular activating system, so the RAS. And this is a filter in your brainstem that determines what information gets through to your conscious awareness. It's programmed by your thoughts, beliefs, and goals. So if you focus on abundance, you start to see more abundance. If you focus on lack, you start to see more scarcity around you. So for example, and I think we've all had this example happen where you're wanting to buy a red Toyota and you start seeing red Toyotas everywhere. It's not that there's more on the street, but you've primed your brain to start noticing
I had that happen to me with MG. We just bought an MG 6 months ago. Never saw them, never noticed them. And now they're everywhere.
Yes. And so imagine if you start priming your brain for all these other opportunities around you as well. It would work in the exact same way, which is actually really cool.
That's why I wanted you here, because I want to learn how to do it. So what can I manifest in my life?
There's no limit to what you can manifest, only the limits imposed by your logical mind. The main block is your subconscious beliefs. So anything aligned with your self-worth, authenticity, and subconscious beliefs, so things like money, love, purpose, health, peace, success, physical outcomes, emotional states, is possible. So you can manifest anything that's congruent with your deeply held beliefs and emotional state, but your nervous system has to feel safe to receive it. One example of something that didn't really work, and I can explain why, was when I started doing this work, I focused on, and I thought I had to become viral in order to be successful in this. That was partly because of the coach I was working with, and I was thinking about her story. So she became viral and then she ended up getting fired from her job and, stepped into so much more abundance through that process. And I thought that my process would be exactly the same. But if you asked me why I wanted to become viral, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I probably would have said, oh, that's just how it's meant to work. Not actually why I wanted it to happen, or that it was in no way aligned with my values, I guess. And so it wasn't working for me. I would have things where I'd sit down and I would try to make these reels when I'm working with my coach and come up with these reels, and my technology would stop working, or I would just feel this resistance to doing it. I had no motivation whatsoever, and I was completely overlooking my intuition in order to make it happen. It just didn't work for me. So that was a big lesson for me, and a lot of time that I spent trying to do something that just wasn't aligned with what I really truly wanted.
How did you overcome that and realise you're incongruent?
The biggest thing was that I eventually just learnt to listen to my intuition and also to really pay attention to the signs. There was one day where I was on holiday with my friends and I said, I have to do these reels. And so they're like, okay, we're going to leave you, we're going to go out for the day. And so you've got the house to yourself so you can focus and put all your energy on creating these reels. And the reels were actually around nutrition and health or something like that. Almost like it's something that you'd post if you were a nutrition coach or a personal trainer. That was the first disconnect, because it's not the work that I do. I'm an intuitive mindset coach. I was misaligned in that sense. And I stopped and I started doing the work, and my technology stopped working. So my phone completely died and my laptop completely died. I couldn't resurrect it. So I had to stop, and then I had to spend all this time and money replacing all of these things. And that's when I was like, okay, you got to start listening, because the signs are very, very clear. Your intuition speaking as well. So just trust that and just let it go. Completely detach from this outcome or this hope that you're going to go viral. And thank God I did, because I was spending all this energy and like I said, just inadvertently reinforcing the belief that I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy of it.
It wasn't what you wanted. Then you're trying to do it and it wasn't working. You weren't feeling good about it. And then you're telling your story, well, I'm not good enough, when it wasn't what you even wanted. And it was that cycle. It's amazing how you were able to see it and get out. I know I've been stuck in there as well, where I'll be like, no, I can do it if I'm disciplined and if I persist through. Because when I'm scrolling on Instagram, they're like, the successful people are the ones that go through it. They do what they don't want to do. But it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just not aligned with what it is I want to do.
Exactly. And I think when you're doing something that's aligned, you're excited. So you follow that excitement, the thing that lights you up. You're not typically feeling that amount of resistance unless it's to do with your subconscious blocks, which is a whole nother thing. But in my case, it was a combination of both. Misalignment and not believing I was worthy.
So when is the time that you manifested something positive into your life?
There have been many times. I think one that I've already spoken about, which I'll mention briefly in terms of that framework as well, was winning the sword at the ICN state show, so taking out the state title. So I've competed in 4 bodybuilding competitions, but there was something that was really different about this one, I felt. The first thing was obviously aligned action. So I had a coach, so I was doing all the work. I also had expanders around me. So my coach was one of my expanders. He also competed at the World Natural Games with me, and he came top in the world. So he was an expander. And my friends, my gym, it's very common in my friendship group to compete, and they really loved it. So that kind of expanded what I thought was possible. And so I practiced and it was really great, but the subconscious blocks were there. And so when I would start posing, I felt a lot of shame around being seen, and those beliefs around, again, you're not worthy, and who are you to be up there and take all the time for the judges where there's people that are more worthy than you. All of those things started coming through. And even though I tried to overcome them, what would actually happen? I'd get up there to pose and my body would freeze. How I overcame that was using mental rehearsal. That was a very big thing. So your brain does not know the difference between what is real and what is not real. So if you close your eyes and you visualize the outcome you're wanting, your brain thinks it's real. And so then you can start to prime yourself to start looking for more things that affirm that belief. And put a lot of practice into posing, of course. I worked with a performance coach. I started visualizing myself holding the sword, and it genuinely felt like a part of me. So as I was visualizing, it felt so real, like it was an extension of who I was as a person. And then obviously in reality, it came through. So a really important thing when I was visualizing was thinking about how I wanted to feel up on stage. So it wasn't just about the actual sword, because that's quite meaningless. It wasn't about the win. It was around my confidence, what getting up on stage meant in terms of what I had to overcome to get to that point, and how I wanted to feel up on stage, radiating happiness and those sorts of things. Another part of it I had in the visualization, I imagined my child self watching me up on stage, and that was really powerful too. So all of those things are what I practice endlessly to get to that outcome.
You mentioned expanders. What are expanders?
So expanders, that's the C to believe. They're people in your life or in media, could be famous people that have achieved something that you're wanting to achieve. We are the average of the 5 people that we spend most of our time with. So if you have people around you that have achieved these incredible things, then it increases the ceiling of what you believe is possible.
It reminds me of Roger Bannister and the 3-minute mile.
Yes.
They believed that it was impossible to run a mile in 3 minutes. And when Roger broke it, in 1 month, 52 people had run a mile under 3 minutes because they saw that it actually was possible.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
And that's exactly that. When you see one person doing it, then your only limit really is yourself.
So why do some people manifest easily while others struggle?
So I think most important of all is it's about ensuring that you're connected or reconnected with your values and your authenticity. So your why has to be very, very deeply aligned, and you have to be very clear on that. We were all born whole and worthy, but throughout our lives, especially as women, we were conditioned to shrink and to conform. So we've stepped away from our authenticity. And like I was saying with my story about becoming viral, I wasn't even aware that that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't stop and ask. I just assumed. So when you drop the need for approval and you step into your full self, opportunities flow effortlessly. So the right people, the right rooms, the right relationships, they find you But first you have to stop hiding. The most magnetic people aren't trying to be liked, they're just being themselves. So I think that's a really big part of it. People that manifest easily tend to feel worthy of what they want, like they believe they're deserving of it. They have fewer subconscious blocks, or they've healed their subconscious blocks or changed them. They live in a regulated nervous system, so they're calm by nature, or they know how to calm themselves down through grounding, deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness, those sorts of practices. And they also surround themselves with expanders, so the people who mirror what's possible. So others might struggle because their internal world is still wired for scarcity, fear, or hypervigilance, and that's not being in flow. It's often a trauma response, and it can be rewired, which is, I guess, the main thing.
It was interesting as you were speaking, talking about that and being in flow and expanders. There was a girl, and for some reason, she does not like me. I'll try, and I put all this effort into saying hello, trying to talk to her, I'll send her a message. And then after a couple of months, when I realised, do I actually want to be friends with her? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, we are completely different. She's not aligned to where I'm going. We're on two different paths. So why am I putting this effort into trying to get her to like me? I guess it's almost that approval and wanting to be, when I've got all these other wonderful people in my life. So now when I see her months later, we say hello, but there isn't any bad energy between us because I've let that go. I don't have to try to be there, and I've had more expanders in my life.
You've just detached from the outcome, which is really beautiful, and reconnected with your, not only authenticity, but your whole and worthy without her. It's not conditional on how someone else thinks about you or feels about you, which I think is really powerful.
And we have, as women, been conditioned to be like, well, we've got to almost please everyone and be nice to everyone. Instead of being ourselves, we're trying to be someone else so that they can like us, get our approval, but it's never going to work.
No, exactly.
So how can I manifest something into my life?
Start small. So choose one desire and then ask yourself, how would I feel if this were already mine? And what thoughts and actions would reflect that version of me? And then start practicing embodying that daily. So the 4 steps to changing your thinking, because your thinking is really at the core of this in terms of that unblocking. The first is awareness. So monitoring your thoughts and beliefs and getting really specific about what you're wanting, the why, which is really important. And is it, aligned with my values around who I want to be in this world, the life that I want to live? The second step is focus attention. So picking that belief that shows up. When does it show up? Is it in particular situations, for example, that you feel more triggered? And can you reframe that belief in real time? You want to monitor your behaviour and thought patterns for at least a month when you start this process, just to kind of get an understanding of things getting in your way, for example, the behaviours or the thoughts as well. The third step is deliberate practice. So repeating the behaviour until it becomes easier than the old one. So silencing your inner critic. We all have this internal voice that tells us we're not worthy or we're not good enough. And then take small intuitive steps towards that goal. And the fourth one, which I think is really important, is accountability. So being really accountable to yourself as well. If it's something that matters, then thinking about what's getting in my way and how am I actively trying to overcome it. And that's where having a coach or other expanders or trusted friends around you is so important, because you can hold each other accountable, but you can also help each other understand and reframe as you're going along, because these blocks are going to keep coming up. Another big thing is if your body doesn't feel safe receiving something, you're going to block it without even trying to, even if you subconsciously desire something. For example, we often self-sabotage by procrastinating. I have clients who, for example, might want to get a new job, but every time they sit down at their computer and they have to start writing their resume, they start cleaning their house instead, or doing anything that's not even remotely associated with finding a job. And they sit down to do this work, they find their nervous system is just, they start to feel sick, they start to feel really anxious, unsettled, restless. Once they've worked through their blocks and their beliefs that are getting in the way of them finding their jobs, it's actually about starting to relax and calm down their nervous system in that moment. So what can happen if many times, every time you sit down at the computer to do your resume, you start feeling sick and anxious, then you're starting to associate that experience with that feeling. And so that just naturally puts you off even more. And the less you do it, the more it reinforces your deeply held belief like maybe I'm not good enough to get a new job, maybe no one's going to want me and there's nothing out there for me, all that sort of stuff. And so what we're wanting to do is to relax our nervous system in that state, so then you can start associating that experience, that behaviour, with something relaxing. And the next step is writing a list. So if you're finding you're very overwhelmed with having to look for jobs and complete your resume, that sort of stuff, sitting down and coming up with a list of all the things that you need to do in order to start looking for a new job, and pick the one thing on that list that you feel the least resistance towards, that feels most enjoyable for you, and just do that and do it with love. So really break it down, and even if it's 5 minutes that you spend doing it, that's still quite powerful. And you'll find that if you do the first 5 minutes, you're probably going to want to do a lot more because it's aligned with your desires.
How can we tell the difference between, okay, it's fear, I need to work through this, versus hold on, my body's telling me not to go for the new job?
That's such a good question. It's hard to always tell the difference, but fear feels very tight, urgent and heavy, whereas intuition is calm, clear and grounded. So it feels like an inner knowing, even if it's illogical, for example. So fear is not knowing something for sure, but knowing the how everything could go wrong. So all the what if thinking of all the things that could get in the way of this happening. So what if they don't like me? What if there's no jobs out there? What if I'm not good enough? That's fear. Intuition is deep knowing that something can happen, something really good can come through, but the not knowing how. So that's the difference. So you can ask yourself, if I weren't afraid, what would I choose? Then you could try this simple exercise. So you could put your hand on your head and take 3 deep breaths and ask logically, what do I want and why? And then put your hand on your heart, take 3 deep breaths and ask emotionally, why do I want this? And thirdly, put your hand on your belly, take 3 deep breaths and intuitively ask, what feels right? And then just trust that your body knows the answer.
I love that. And it's such a simple practice to do.
Yes, exactly. We often don't take the time to do this because we get so caught up in the fear of not doing it, what it means about us. We kind of get lost along the way.
Can you still manifest if you feel this stuck, anxious or overwhelmed?
You can, but your focus must be on nervous system safety, like creating that sense of safety, because it's going to help bring the manifestation through. When you're dysregulated, your body treats all change as a threat. And naturally, as humans, we don't like change anyway. Anything unknown or unfamiliar feels very terrifying for us. You want to start with inner calm and then manifest from there. But even high-performing people like Wall Street executives, they're typically pretty dysregulated, they're pretty stressed, but they manifest wealth and abundance with ease constantly. So that's an example of a time that you can do that. And I think the reason why they're so effective is, well, one, there's a lot of aligned action. They don't have those blocks. They believe they're worthy of the abundance and possibly entitled to it. And they're surrounded by expanders. So yes, I do believe nervous system regulation is crucial, but you can do it without it too.
Okay. So they might manifest that abundance on their relationships and health, and other areas could suffer.
Absolutely, because they're not living in integrity. Well, in some might be, so I can't generalise, but in theory, yes, that's when you'd find that. When you're just manifesting in one area, but it doesn't generalise to other areas of your life, that can be a bit of an indication.
I have heard a stat where it's like 80% of billionaires aren't even happy, even though they've got all the money in the world. What about manifesting a strong body or good health, being a gym? How can people do that?
You want to start with the belief and work out what the underlying belief is for you. If that, for example, if you find that you're not able to achieve that and to change your body in that way, you want to work out what your belief is. So for me, a big underlying belief that I had to really work through before bodybuilding, for example, was I believed that I had bad genetics and that I couldn't control myself around food. And that kept me from even trying, to be honest, because I thought I had such a fixed mindset around it. So I competed. Obviously, it took me years to get to that point. So I mastered that through competing and I changed that belief. But now, on the other side of competing, my new belief that I'm working through is you can achieve this outcome, but it comes at a cost. And I don't want to live my life like that. I don't want to feel like I can only achieve my health and fitness goals if I don't socialize and track every single thing that I eat. So that's something I'm actively working towards. But your reality is a mirror. So it reflects who you are, not just what you want. As you work your way up to that ideal, you can use mental imagery as a tool to rehearse the outcomes that you're wanting to work towards. And this can become a lot more familiar and safer for you as well. And that's how you can bypass that resistance to creating a strong body and good health. That repetition creates change, but pairing it with something positive, like a positive emotion, fast tracks your results. So your nervous system needs to feel safe. You've got to ground and breathe and calm your nervous system down, and then also work on those underlying beliefs as well.
What steps can I do to overcome that, to manifest that exercise and being healthy doesn't come at a cost?
That's such a good question. So the key is embodying that belief. So visualize yourself performing the act. So if it's around eating, for example, you can visualize yourself being out surrounded by family and friends, and visualize yourself eating in moderation and feeling like, I'm just nourishing my body. I'm feeding myself with love, for example. Again, the brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined repetition. So the mental rehearsal primes your nervous system and enhances your performance, and then you can live it as though it's already done. So again, that RAS, that filters reality to match your focus. If you hold a vision, embody its emotion, that feeling of calm and safety when you're eating the food, but also, again, the self-love, like you're nourishing your body, coming at it from that angle, not that you're restricting or controlling, because it's not helpful. That's in itself a bit of controlling and scarcity mindset. Your brain will start to align your environment with that frequency as well.
I find a lot of it is the mind. I don't drink too often, and when I went out with some friends and they were all having wine and I was the only one that said no, the moment, probably about half an hour before I got there, saying, okay, I'm not drinking today because I've had a couple of drinks over the week. I just don't want it. I don't feel good afterwards. And then I got there and I started to feel anxious, and then they're like, oh, do you want some wine? And I went, no, thank you. And they went, okay. And it was over. So it was more my mind being afraid to say no than it was what my friends were going to say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And how did it feel doing something that was so deeply aligned with your intentions and your goals?
I had no problem not drinking. Even as I was drinking, I was happy with my water and didn't miss it. And now it's become ingrained in me. We were out for lunch today. The whole table's drinking wine. I'm like, I'm happy with my water.
Oh, beautiful.
But it just took that repetition and that practice of saying no. It's just a habit and just coming out of it.
And the beauty of that also is that you did something that felt good for you, that you decided for yourself, rather than being guided by what other people were going to think and feel. So I think that's quite powerful too.
I've heard people say, I've heard about manifestation, I've tried doing it, it just hasn't worked. Why hasn't it worked, and what am I missing?
So first of all, welcome to the practice, because that's so common. It is hard. Again, like we said, it's not as easy as they make it sound in The Secret. And you're not broken, you're completely normal, but you could be possibly manifesting from a dysregulated state. So when you're feeling quite stressed, you might not be taking aligned action. So if that's happening, you can question why that is or what's getting in the way of you taking that aligned action. You might have some of those deeply held beliefs around unworthiness, or that you're not good enough, so those subconscious blocks. You could also be too attached to the outcome or the timeline. It has to happen at this point in this amount of time, and it happens in its own good time, unfortunately. So it does take a lot of patience and trusting the process. And I think that's why it's so important to enjoy the journey too, because you don't know how long it's going to take. But you can trust that everything that happens along the way, every test, every hard experience is there for your evolution, and it's there for your greatest good.
What are other mistakes that people make with manifesting?
So they say with manifesting, it's always about the what you want, but not how it's going to happen. So not worrying too much about how, allowing that to unfold naturally. And I can give you an example, which was both a manifestation, a moment of expansion, and also many tests in one, and quite a painful experience. It was helpful. So 2 years ago, I went to Europe right after my divorce. And that was a very big deal for me, because it was me traveling Europe on my own. And I had all these, I guess the biggest thing that I wanted, that I was manifesting before I even knew really what manifestation was, wanting to have new experiences in my life that I hadn't had before. And so I went to Europe. I landed in Mykonos in Greece. And the first person I saw was a man that I had dated for a while, but he was a very hot and cold individual. So anyone dating will kind of understand this pattern. I met him and his whole family. What are the chances of this? And he said, oh, Cosi, I'll message you. And I thought, oh no, I know now my whole trip I'm going to be waiting for this message. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that energy. So I made the decision to just remove him off social media, so not to worry about that at all and just focus on having a good time. And then the next day, I was walking down the streets of Mykonos. I couldn't get into my accommodation at the time, and I was carrying 50 bottles of water, looking quite dishevelled because I was travelling the night before and I hadn't slept much. And this man stopped me and he said, oh, we're going to this place, would you like to come? And I was like, oh, I have no other plans. I don't know anyone here, so sure, I'm going to go do it. Didn't know anything about him, but I thought I'll just be open to the experience.
And you were by yourself?
I was by myself. But, going to a very public place, I thought it was okay. So I went to this place. And he was someone that I had a lot of chemistry with. We were quite compatible. We got along so well. And eventually found out he was a millionaire. I didn't know that at the time. It wouldn't have mattered to me, but that was the case. And I had my whole trip planned. But I ended up obviously meeting this guy, and he sorted out my whole trip. I travelled all of Europe, flew me business class. I had all of these crazy experiences. And I had genuinely experiences that I couldn't have had if I had just been on my own the whole time. And I think what happened just before I met him was me putting a real firm boundary and limit with that guy that was, playing with my feelings at times. I think that was actually quite crucial about me stepping into my worth and saying, no, that's enough is enough. I don't want to wait on someone else. I want to create my reality. So I met this man, had a beautiful holiday romance and experienced things that I could only imagine.
It's amazing that you were open to it as well, because you had your trip planned and you weren't like, no, my trip's going like this because I'm going X, Y, Z, and you were open to a new experience, which sounds like it was bigger and better.
Yes, it was a very helpful experience in many ways. One, it expanded what I thought was possible. This is the what. So I was thinking and manifesting, this is what I'm wanting for my trip, the experiences that I'm wanting and how I want to feel, but not the how. I could never have planned to bump into this man and to have a holiday romance in the way that it was. I couldn't have planned for that. However, because I needed to do a lot of work on my subconscious beliefs, my core beliefs around myself, I very quickly went back into like an old childhood pattern of subjugation and people pleasing. So yes, I had some wonderful experiences, but completely derailed my trip, which is something that I very intentionally planned. Interestingly, in the lead up to the trip, I had a lot of resistance. I didn't want to plan any of it. It's like the most exciting thing you can imagine to plan a hot trip in Europe, but I didn't want to. That was probably a bit of an indication. I should have just listened to that and not planned as much as I did. Obviously, it was all going to be looked after anyways, seemingly. And so whilst it was a really beautiful experience, I felt very, I guess disappointed in myself at the end of it that I didn't get to do what I truly wanted to do, and that I wasn't strong enough at that point in time to say, no, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to go off on my own. Thank you so much. So yeah, that was a very valuable lesson for me in self-worth and speaking my truth.
Wow. Would you do it differently next time?
Well, I am going to Europe this summer, so this will be my next trip. And what I'm visualizing and manifesting more than anything is just a boat trip in Milos. I didn't get to go to Milos, and I really wanted to last time. So this time I'm going to make it happen and just focus on what I want to do and not let these sorts of things derail my trip.
Sounds amazing. You mentioned your self-worth. Why is self-worth one of the biggest blocks to manifestation?
So self-worth is one of the biggest blocks because it's about your subconscious belief. So we receive what we believe we deserve. Your life mirrors your subconscious self-worth. So this trip in Europe, I felt completely out of place with this person. I think one thing that I would also change, for example, is just kind of being a little bit more in the moment, not worrying so much, not focusing so much on how I didn't belong in these places. And, that really did take away from that experience. And I think also the scarcity around it too, like worrying that if I didn't get to go to Milos then 2 years ago, it would never happen, but it's always available.
Personally, from a self-worth point of view, and I feel like it's something I'm always working on, and I unpeel one layer and then there's like another layer. So what is a subconscious block and how does it form?
So a subconscious block is like a limiting belief that's formed from childhood emotional experiences. We've all had certain emotional experiences as children that shape the way that we view ourselves and then the way that we also view the world. So some examples of subconscious blocks would be love must be earned, or one of my ones is I must hustle and overwork in order to be worthy. So that block stays active until you rewire it. So manifestation is about rewiring your mind and body to believe that something is possible and then creating the conditions for it to happen.
How can I go ahead and unblock that subconscious block?
So if you have a recurring negative thought, it's not your thought that is wired into your neural pathway. It's the belief that underlies that thought. So neuroplasticity works through repetition and emotional intensity. So you cannot undo wiring in the brain, but you can overwrite it. So repeating a new thought or behavior so many times with such emotional intensity that it becomes a more energy efficient pathway than the one that you've had until now. So we can do this through positive affirmations as well. The first step is you want to identify the belief that you have, trace it to its emotional root. So what childhood experience was linked to this belief, the formation of this belief. And this is where working with a coach can be really helpful. And then you want to rewire it, and you can use different things like inner child work, inner child healing, for example, looking for evidence for and against to reframe the belief, visualization. And then you want to regulate your nervous system to receive it safely. So ask yourself, what is the evidence that you must, for example, in my case, overwork in order to be worthy of abundance? And keep asking until you find the answer. So for me, it's about, I'm a migrant person. I wasn't born in this country. This has never happened in my family. Everyone worked hard, and certainly back in Romania, they worked hard and still didn't have enough. I grew up in a culture where there's a lot of scarcity around. After I've identified all of these beliefs, I then created an affirmation that says, well, I could be the first. I'm worthy of my dream life. It's destined. And every time I say this limiting belief, or I catch myself kind of doubting myself and saying, well, it's not going to happen for me, I'm not good enough, I swap it with this affirmative belief, and I've got to do it again and again and again. But in the work of Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a neuroscientist, she teaches that it takes around 63 days to truly rewire a thought pattern or habit. So it's not 21 days as previously believed. So the first 21 days is the time that you monitor it. So you start to just catch yourself having this negative belief or that inner critic taking over. And then you want to start breaking down the old thought. And the next 42 days, stabilize and automate the new one. So you make it more efficient than the old belief. And then that's how we slowly change it. So it just takes practice and time.
I am a believer that all it takes is a decision. Once you make that decision, you need to do that constant work.
100%, yeah. So it's like going to the gym. You're not going to go to the gym once and see huge changes in your physique. You're going to have to go repeatedly for months, and then you'll start to see those changes. And most importantly, you start to feel better.
It would be nice if one workout does it all.
It would be good.
Why is it that negative experiences affect us more than positive ones?
So it's because our brain is wired for survival. So negative experiences stick more deeply. So we're programmed for loss aversion, so avoiding things that are linked with our survival rather than that abundance thinking. So it takes 5 positive interactions to do the weight of 1 negative one. And that comes from the research from the Gottman Institute on relationships. So it's very, very interesting how powerful it is. And the beauty also, though, is that neuroplasticity lets us shift this. So with gratitude, safety, and emotional reframing and repetition, we can actually change this.
I do find that true. Even with kids, you can do one negative thing and they remember the one negative thing you do, and it's not until you've really overfilled them that they can finally let it go. So moving on to a new section that I started, I don't think we had this last time you were on, is a rapid fire. What's one thing you manifested that still blows your mind?
My trip to Bali. It was just an incredible trip. There wasn't one thing necessarily, but the people I met, my experiences were better than I could have dreamed.
What's a time you accidentally manifested the wrong thing?
Meeting the millionaire in Europe, I think, was a really good example of that. Ultimately, when I focus on scarcity and fear, life just always reflects that back to me.
If you could leave listeners with one manifestation mantra, what would it be?
So I've got two that I've combined, which is every challenge I face is leading me to more evolution and transformation, process over perfection. And every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better.
I like that one. I did Tony Robbins, and that's part of one of his courses.
Oh, beautiful.
Every day, in every way, I'm getting, and you can substitute for I'm getting stronger and stronger, better and better.
Oh,
That's a great one.
That's so nice. I didn't know that was his.
Maybe he took that from you. What's one book you recommend everyone should read on manifestation?
I've got three. So The Source by Dr. Tara Swart. So she's a neuroscientist that talks about the science behind manifestation. I'm a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero, which really changed the way that I thought about money and abundance, from it being something that's bad to something that is all around us. And then Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
And who's your favourite online manifestation influencer to follow?
So Lacey Phillips would be one, and also Dr. Tara Swart, and they actually work together. And I really appreciate the work they've done on simplifying manifestation, but also blending science with spirituality.
So what's one simple habit, if I want to shift my mindset, that I can do every day?
Start your day with an elevated emotion. So the thing you do, the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning will filter through your entire day. Same with the last thing you do before you go to bed. You're going to spend your dreaming and processing throughout your sleep. So waking up with an elevated emotion of gratitude, joy, optimism, and then ask yourself, what is the greatest expression of myself that I can be today? And then picking two thoughts and two emotions to embody for that day and see what happens.
I love that. I'm going to start using that. I find that sometimes I'll wake up, and if I don't jump out of bed straight away, or I'm a bit more lethargic, I can go on a downward spiral, like the Bold and the Beautiful, making up stories in my mind that didn't even exist. So yeah, I definitely need to be conscious.
Yeah, and we all do it. That's the thing.
You have provided us so many tools and tips in this whole session that we can all start using immediately. Something that has seemed to be quite a theme is expanders and coach, and to help shift that thinking. So how do you help clients shift their thinking?
I blend psychological tools with an intuitive strategy and process. So we do a lot of core belief work, so working out what particular limiting beliefs are holding my clients back from manifesting the life that they're wanting. Then we do inner child healing work, and we use visualization as well to rewire and change the meaning attached to those experiences in childhood. And then I also use nervous system regulation and meditation as well. So what we know is that when you're changing your subconscious beliefs through nervous system regulation and meditation, so when you go into meditation, your brain goes into a theta state brainwave. When you're in that state, you are 200 to 500 times more effective changing your beliefs than solely using affirmations alone. So doing these affirmations in the mirror can be really effective if they're authentic and your why is very clear, but you just need to repeat them many, many more times compared to if you're doing this through meditation, through this guided meditation practice. So that's something I do. So we clear the blocks and we make space for what clients are calling in. And then it's also around helping clients identify the life that they want to live and their goals as well, because a lot of people don't really know exactly, they know something's missing, but they don't know exactly what to do to get to that point.
How can our listeners find you or book an appointment with yourself?
So you can find me on Instagram at cosmina.naum and just book through the link in my bio.
I'll put that all into the show notes, the Instagram, the link for booking, and they can all reach out to you. What an episode, packed with so much value. Thank you again, Cosi, for coming onto the show. We covered a range of powerful insights and topics around manifesting, how to ensure your beliefs are aligned, and the importance of taking intentional, aligned action. One of my favorite parts was when Cosi broke down her 4 key steps to changing your thinking. Firstly, awareness, monitoring your thoughts and beliefs. Second, focused attention, observing your behavior and patterns consistently for at least a month. 3, deliberate practice. Learn to quiet the inner critic by taking small steps forward. And 4, accountability. working with a coach or a trusted friend to rewire your mindset. Cosi, you truly are an expert in your field. You're deeply intuitive, grounded, and passionate about helping others connect to their most authentic self. Remember to download the free Future Self Activation audio, and you can book in a complimentary discovery call with Cosi to explore how she can support you on your journey. All the details are in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners. Until next time, dominate your life.